While it might have seemed like the Saw series was game over when the 7th installment came out in 2010, there was still a lot of bloodshed to be had on the big screen. With a little revisionist history, some new and confusing characters, and even more disgusting traps to behold, the 8th installment of the Saw franchise has an even more complex relationship to the original story than the other sequels. So let's walk through how exactly Jigsaw fits into the overall puzzle, shall we? Face the spoilers or click away now.
Make your choice.
Still dead. One of the biggest questions facing the Saw revival was how the filmmakers would deal with the demise of the franchise's primary antagonist, John Kramer, aka Jigsaw. Unlike Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, Jigsaw never had any supernatural powers. He was just a wickedly brilliant guy with an axe to grind, and eventually a terminal case of cancer. So imagine the audience's surprise when John Kramer shows up to stage a new grisly test series in Jigsaw. Yes, it's the same guy who was laid out cold and in the buff on the autopsy table in Saw 4, and he's definitely alive when we see him in this movie, but he hasn't magically risen from the grave. Instead, his newest group trap series actually takes place 10 years in the past, even though some clever editing suggests otherwise. And while it looks like there are 5 victims to bite the dust, there is one guy who secretly walks away from the whole thing. Settling the score. In the beginning of Jigsaw's group trap, there's one man who's left behind during the first test because he's not even awake for it. But it turns out that guy doesn't bite it after all. Logan Nelson, who's been analyzing all the new bodies popping up with Jigsaw puzzle pieces carved out of them, seems like a nice guy throughout the movie, until we learn that he's actually Jigsaw's secret protege. As it turns out, early in his career, he mislabeled John's brain scans, which may have made the difference in his treatment and prognosis. But even though Jigsaw's willing to put him into the group game for his mistake, he changes his mind and decides he doesn't want Logan to bleed out over a simple workplace error and decides to train him instead. Whether he's ever worked with any of the other Jigsaw minions remains to be seen. A game of his own. The new bodies that are popping up around town belong to victims of Logan's modern-day copycat game and have each escaped real punishment for their various crimes thanks to Detective Halloran's questionable ethics. One of these people is Edgar Munson, who's shot by police after claiming to hold the lives of 5 others in his hands with a remote control. He just so happens to have been the man who attacked Logan's wife but was let off easy by Halloran. But it's not just his wife's fate that makes Logan hate Halloran. He also had a girl about his daughter's age pop up on his autopsy table who was attacked by a guy who bribed Halloran, so he wants to stop the bad cop in the worst way possible. And all of the people who've perished in this new round of games are dangerous perps who Halloran has let off the hook recently. Eye on the prize. As the body count climbs, Halloran starts to suspect Logan's Jigsaw-obsessed assistant Eleanor, and for good reason. She's been recreating Jigsaw's most infamous traps from dark web-scoured blueprints and seems oddly fascinated by his history. Once Logan's old combat buddy Detective Hunt catches wind of her sinister little studio, he starts to buy into the theory that Logan and Eleanor are behind these fresh homicides. However, Logan plants some key evidence that points at Halloran being responsible for everything and sets up for a final grudge match with Halloran himself. A big showdown. There are only 3 bodies that emerge from Logan's games, which is 2 fewer than the casualties of Jigsaw's original scene. Jigsaw's final 2 victims' bodies have never been discovered and are still tucked away in Jill's farmhouse. And that's exactly where Logan wants to play in his own final game with Halloran to make it a total of 5 players, with him being the sole survivor once again. After planting clues for Eleanor to follow in the morgue, she thinks she's leading him out to the location, with Logan knowing full well that Halloran will follow. Once Halloran tries to nab them, he's quickly overtaken by Logan, who advises Eleanor to make a break for it and escape. That's when Logan seizes the chance to put himself and Halloran in one final terrible trap. The voiceover, which has been dubbed from old Jigsaw tapes, suggests that it's John Kramer who's running things and demanding confessions from the two. And it looks like Logan fails the test and is taken out first. But once Halloran confesses to having cost innocent people their lives, Logan reawakens, full-on Jigsaw circa the first Saw style, and reveals himself to be the orchestrator of this trap. And Logan has made a game Halloran cannot win. An alibi. Eleanor's part in all of this is interesting to say the least. At first, she seems to be a perfect distraction for investigators due to her extracurricular activities, and then she seems to be a budding love interest for the widower. But in the end, Logan says she's just a pawn, meant to provide him an alibi and support his story that Halloran tried to kill them. But there may be more to her than meets the eye. After all, Logan seems to be doing this solely to punish Halloran, and now that he's brought his targets to justice, he has a life to get back to. But Eleanor seems just weird enough to fill the shoes of a Jigsaw emulator. She's obviously good at building traps and has no family to speak of. And even though she doesn't know she's just worked with Jigsaw's latest protege, she'll probably find out eventually because Logan can't possibly explain why Halloran's head ends up looking like an octopus in the end. Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel, plus check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.